"I'm not giving you the money." My grandfather's words hung in the air of his mahogany-paneled study, each syllable precise and cutting. I stood there, 28 years old, still in my investment banking suit, my carefully prepared business proposal clutched in my trembling hands. "Not until you prove you can handle it." That wasn't what I'd expected when I'd received his call about discussing my portion of the family inheritance. As the oldest granddaughter and the only one with an MBA, I'd assumed he was finally ready to hand over the reins to the family's real estate empire. Instead, he slid an envelope across his antique desk. Inside was a check for $50,000, a mere fraction of my expected inheritance, and a handwritten note: "Show me what you can build with this in 1 year, then we'll talk about the rest." Looking back now, as I signed the papers to acquire our 10th luxury apartment complex, I understand what my grandfather was doing, but at that moment, I felt nothing but frustration and something dangerously close to rage. The Laurent family had built its fortune through real estate, starting with my great-grandfather's first apartment building in 1947. By the time I was born, we owned properties across 3 states. I'd grown up attending property viewings instead of playground visits, learning about cap rates before I understood long division. Our family dinners were more like board meetings, with discussions revolving around market trends, property valuations, and investment strategies. My grandfather, Richard Laurent, had taken a modest portfolio of residential properties and transformed it into a billion-dollar enterprise. He was legendary in real estate circles for his ability to spot emerging markets before anyone else. His methodology was almost mystical to outsiders, a combination of intense market research, network cultivation, and what he called street sense. But he was equally famous for his stubborn adherence to traditional business practices and his resistance to modern technology. I remember the day I first recognized the gap between his methods and modern possibilities. I was 24, fresh out of business school, shadowing him during a property assessment, while he walked the neighborhood, talking to local shop owners and residents. I was running demographic analyses on my tablet, studying traffic patterns, and reviewing social media sentiment about the area. When I tried to show him my findings, he waved them away. "Emily," he said, gesturing to the street around us, "real estate isn't about spreadsheets and social media, it's about understanding the heartbeat of a neighborhood. Your father understood that." The mention of my father stunned then, as it did now in his study. James Laurent had been the perfect bridge between my grandfather's old-school approach and the modern era. He had embraced technology while maintaining the personal touch that had built our empire. His death 5 years ago in a car accident had left a void in both the family and the business. My grandfather had taken full control again, postponing his retirement and my presumed succession. That's where we clashed. I'd spent 2 years at Goldman Sachs, watching how technology was transforming real estate. I saw opportunities in data analytics, artificial intelligence, and digital property management that my grandfather dismissed as fancy gadgets. My proposal was to modernize our family business, starting with a complete digital transformation of our property management system. The presentation I'd prepared was comprehensive: market analysis, cost projections, ROI calculations, and case studies of successful digital transformations in real estate. I'd even included testimonials from industry leaders who'd implemented similar systems, but my grandfather hadn't even opened it. "Emily," he'd said, leaning back in his leather chair, "real estate isn't about computers, it's about understanding people, walking the streets, feeling the pulse of a neighborhood." Your father understood that. Standing in his study that day, I made a decision. "Fine," I said, picking up the check. 1 year. I walked out without looking back, my heels clicking against the marble floors of the mansion I'd grown up in. My mother was waiting in the foyer, anxiety written across her face. She'd always been the mediator between my grandfather's traditionalism and my modern approaches. "He's testing you," she said softly, squeezing my arm. "He did the same thing to your father." That night, instead of returning to my luxury apartment, a gift from grandfather for my MBA graduation, I went to my best friend Rachel's modest 2-bedroom in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Over cheap wine and takeout, I began to formulate a plan. Rachel, a software developer for a major tech company, had been my sounding board throughout my career. She'd helped me understand the technical aspects of my digital transformation proposal, and now, she was helping me see the opportunity in my grandfather's challenge. "Think about it," she said, refilling our glasses. "He's giving you the chance to prove your concept without risking the entire family business. This could be exactly what you need." The next morning, I resigned from my banking job and rented a small office in the same neighborhood. Rachel thought I was crazy to give up a six-figure salary, but I saw an opportunity. The area was gentrifying rapidly, but unlike other transforming neighborhoods, it had a strong community of local business owners fighting to preserve its character. I spent the first month just walking the streets, talking to residents and business owners. I learned about their fears of being priced out, their dreams for the community, and their frustration with absentee landlords. Every conversation confirmed what I'd suspected: there was a way to do real estate development that served both investors and communities. Maria, who'd owned a local bakery for 20 years, told me how she'd watched 3 different property management companies come and go, each more disconnected from the community than the last. "They don't understand that a neighborhood is like a garden," she said, kneading dough as we talked. "You can't just buy it and expect it to thrive. You have to nurture it." Using $30,000 of my grandfather's money, I purchased and renovated a small mixed-use building. The previous owner had left it in disrepair, using it primarily for storage. The renovation process was my first real test as a property developer, and it taught me lessons no business school could. I worked with local contractors, many of whom shared stories about my father's fairness and integrity. Miguel, who'd been our family's go-to electrician for decades, told me how my father had helped him start his own business, even co-signing his first business loan. It seemed my father had had a whole life in these neighborhoods that I'd known nothing about. The renovation was where I implemented my tech strategy. Working nights and weekends with Rachel, I developed a proprietary app that allowed tenants to pay rent, request maintenance, and communicate with each other. But it went beyond basic property management. The app included features for local business promotion, community event planning, and neighborhood resource sharing. The ground floor became a co-working space for local entrepreneurs, with flexible leasing terms that made it accessible to small businesses. I installed smart building systems for energy efficiency and security, but made sure to maintain the building's historic character that the community loved. Within 6 months, the building was fully occupied, with a waiting list. The co-working space had become a community hub, hosting everything from business workshops to neighborhood council meetings. The property's value had increased by 40%, but more importantly, it had become a model for sustainable urban development. My grandfather didn't contact me once during this time. I'd hear updates from my mother. He was watching, she assured me, keeping tabs on my progress through his vast network. I focused on proving him wrong about technology while proving him right about understanding people. I used the remaining $20,000 to develop a more sophisticated property management platform, incorporating blockchain for transparent record keeping and AI for predictive maintenance. When several local property owners asked to use the platform for their buildings, I realized I'd created something bigger than just a management tool. The platform, which I named NeighborHub, became a comprehensive solution for property owners who wanted to maintain community connections while maximizing efficiency. It included features for local business promotion, community event planning, and neighborhood resource sharing. The AI component helped predict maintenance needs and optimize energy usage, while the blockchain element ensured transparent record keeping and secure transactions. Rachel helped me refine the technical aspects, working weekends and evenings in exchange for equity in what we both realized could be a significant venture. We brought in her colleague, Marcus, a UX designer who'd grown up in the neighborhood, to ensure the platform was accessible to users of all tech levels. 11 months after that day in his study, I returned to my grandfather's house. This time, I brought audited financials showing a 60% return on investment, testimonials from happy tenants, and statistics showing how our tech platform had reduced operating costs by 35% while increasing tenant satisfaction scores by 50%. The presentation included case studies from 3 other property owners who'd adopted NeighborHub, showing similar improvements in their operations. I'd also included a community impact report, documenting how our approach had helped preserve local businesses and strengthen neighborhood ties. He listened silently as I presented, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he walked to his wall safe and removed a thick folder. "Your father," he said, placing it on the desk, "left these for you." Inside were detailed notes about every property he'd managed, every relationship he'd built, every lesson he'd learned. In the margins were his dreams for the future of the business, including sketches for a digital property management system remarkably similar to what I'd built. He knew, my grandfather said, his voice thick with emotion, that the business would need to evolve. He also knew you would be the one to do it. He paused, adjusting his glasses. I needed to be sure you could honor his legacy while building your own. Today, Loron Properties looks very different from when my great-grandfather started it. We've expanded beyond traditional real estate into property technology, with NeighborHub now serving thousands of properties nationwide. Yet we've maintained our core principle, understanding that real estate is fundamentally about people and communities. My grandfather, now officially retired, still visits the office every week. He's learned to use an iPad, though he complains about it constantly, and has become an unexpected champion of our tech initiatives. His street-level wisdom, combined with our technological innovations, has created something truly unique in the industry. Last month, during the opening of our newest mixed-use development, I found my grandfather chatting with a young tech entrepreneur about her plans for an AI-driven urban planning tool. Later, he pulled me aside. Your father would be proud, he said, his eyes glistening. Not just of what you built, but how you built it. The check for $50,000 hangs framed in my office, alongside my father's notes. They remind me that sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property, it's the challenge to prove yourself worthy of what came before while having the courage to build something new. Looking back at that day in his study, I realize my grandfather gave me something far more valuable than money. He gave me the opportunity to prove that innovation and tradition aren't enemies, but partners in building a lasting legacy.